I am from the Brooklyn of brownstones, bagel shops, bike lanes, and grassy parks.
Parks in my neighborhood are dangerous after 5. There is no studying under the shining light of the afternoon sun with textbooks that cost $1 a page. $1 a page that could be spent funding teachers who actually know what they're talking about. When it comes to school, people in my neighborhood think it's all the same. You'll get a decent education wherever you go.
Go to PS8. It's one of the best schools in the city. That's what my parents were told. That's why so many parents decided to move to Brooklyn Heights, and it paid off. PS8 had it all: parent-funded art classes, electives galore, advanced classes, etc. But still I heard parents complain that it wasn't enough. They wanted more teachers with more degrees, smaller classes, bigger budgets, better resources.
Resources were always scarce. I got my degree. I don't need to be here, said the teachers who couldn't understand our frustrations or whose frustrations overtook them, reminding us of that truth that they didn't need to be there, so why were they? In my middle school, Mott Hall Bridges Academy, where we were 99% Black and Hispanic, we were constantly told that we were brilliant, that if we worked hard, we could do anything, that the possibilities were endless, that we were more than where we lived, that we were what we made ourselves to be. Our discovery was a blessing. Cameras flashing, reporters asking, and money and donations, and TED Talks from our principals, a conversation being started about low-income schools and resources, a conversation being started about Brownsville and brilliance, a conversation being started that wasn't happening before. But then the cameras left. The conversation ceased, and the people who opened up their pockets felt good until they forgot why they opened them in the first place.
I have always been in a school with resources, a school with privilege. But many in our community complained that it still wasn't enough. All they could see was what their child didn't have. They seem to have no idea what the New York City public school system is really like for most of its underserved students.
Parents in my school did not know about the achievement gap. They didn't have the knowledge nor the time to focus on what math books their children were getting, what their children's drama teachers were doing, or if they even had drama teachers in the first place. Instead, they had to focus on how they were going to put food on the table and what time they were going to take off of work to go and pick them up. I went to a middle school where parents entrusted the public school system to fill the gaps that they weren't given the resources to fill.
When it came time for middle school, I was excited to go to the school connected to my elementary school, but just beyond the confines of my brownstone Brooklyn neighborhood into downtown Brooklyn. But many parents had problems with it. They used veiled phrases. It's not in a good neighborhood. I would rather send my kids to school in Long Island. The other students in the building don't care about school and get in a lot of trouble. There are other high schools in the building, which is scary for my young child. What were the real reasons? Was it because the other schools in the building enrolled close to 100% students of color? Was it because many of those students were economically disadvantaged?
In my 9th grade year, I was introduced to a program called SEO Scholars that helps low-income students to and through college. I read the flyer. SEO Scholars creates a more equitable society by closing the academic and opportunity gap for motivated young people. Before my freshman year, I had never heard the phrase opportunity gap.
Opportunities were something we were given, not something we needed to earn. Our schools provided us with extra programs in everything from computer science to basketball to musical theater. We never needed to search for these. They were always right in our hands.
I have been exposed to the truth about our education system, the truth about educational inequity, and the truth about who benefits, the truth about who doesn't. In my 4 years of high school, I will have taken over 720 hours of supplemental education in English and in math. 720 hours after school, on my weekends, and during my summers that I spent, making up for the education that was stolen from me.
New York, a supposed city for all, a melting pot where anyone can rise up and accomplish their dreams. But how can someone have an equal chance of accomplishing their dreams when they are left behind before they turn 5 years old? When the system segregates students by race, class, and academic performance. And then there are those who are privileged within this system. They will grow up without the benefits of the beautiful diversity this city has to offer, without understanding the privilege their zip code, first language, and skin color have afforded them.
Schools.nyc.gov. The DOE works hard to ensure that students in every borough, district, neighborhood, and school have the tools they need to achieve their dreams. We know that excellence is more than a goal. It is the birthright of every child in our city. It is the birthright of every child in our city. It is the birthright of every child in our city. But is it the birthright of every child in our city? Thank you.
Back to continue the conversation on school segregation is the Atlantic's Adam Harris.
Let's have another round of applause for our fantastic students. Thank you both so much for that powerful testimony. So I kind of want to start this conversation kind of with, just the broad question of you both had different experiences in schools. So what have New York City's schools been like for you growing up? What have those different experiences been like?
So I've always been, as I said in my testimony, in a school with a lot of resources and privilege. Every school that I've gone to has been majority white students, even though the New York City public school system is only 15% white students. And we have had endless opportunities, resources, amazing teachers, beautiful buildings. We always had the best of what the system has to offer. And there was nothing we needed to do to earn that. We were just given that. And I was raised in a way that I was taught to acknowledge the privilege that I had in this situation, but also use that to help others. And so I always knew that I had this privilege. I always knew I wanted to do something. And then joining the organization we're a part of, Teens Take Charge, I heard the stories of so many students like Tiffany who are so incredible, but just weren't given the same opportunities. And has made me even more passionate to make a difference.
You're incredible too. I would say my experience, as she said, has been kind of the complete opposite of that. I can backtrack to when I first started. So I moved like 3 times throughout my life. So in the beginning, I went to this school in Cypress Hills in Brooklyn, and it was a bilingual school, so all of our classes would be one day in English and one day in Spanish. So it was a fairly accelerated school. And then I moved to Far Rockaway, Queens, and turns out they were a few months, maybe even a year behind the school that I was already attending. And they were both public schools. So I went, and then I told my parents, but they didn't understand the gravity of the situation, and I don't think they could understand the impact that can have on a student. So I excelled throughout the years as I was in that school because I was already at the starting point. But I moved again in my 7th grade year to Brownsville, Brooklyn, and I attended Mott Hall Bridges Academy. And it was the same. It wasn't a few months behind, but I definitely already knew some of what was being taught in my classes. So it was very interesting. I also never really understood the impact that would have on me as a student and on my development and my education. And eventually, I joined this program called BEAM, which provides students with STEM courses. We go for 3 weeks to a college campus, and we learn computer science. We take college math courses. It was very difficult 3 weeks for me because I was not ready or prepared for any of those courses that I took, but it definitely showed me that there was a lot that I was missing. And when I joined SEO Scholars in my high school, that's when I first started to hear the words opportunity gap and achievement gap in low-income students, and that's when I realized that I have to work twice as hard. And I've always been told that I have to work twice as hard, but to me, that was just a fact. It wasn't a problem. I never had an issue with it because the way that it was explained to me was just, you have to work twice as hard. But when I joined Teens Take Charge, that's when, and I heard everyone's stories, and I heard all of the testimonies from other students, that's when I realized not only were we working twice as hard, but we were working twice as hard for half as much. Sorry, I was speaking for too long.
No. Yeah, and you talked about kind of when you noticed that your educational experience was different. But Sophie, can you kind of talk a little bit about when you realized that your educational experience was different than other students in New York?
Well, I think for me, I think I was very different than a lot of people in my community because my parents always taught me that I had a lot of privilege in the place that I was, and not to feel ashamed of that, but to use it to help others. So I was always pretty aware of it from the time I was young, and I knew that I was in a school that had a lot of opportunities, and I had teachers that I loved, and I was always really engaged. But I think when I really learned how deep the problems were and how what a problem it was, and that there was something that I could do about it, really had to be once I joined Teens Take Charge, because I heard the stories of all these people and met the people who were actually impacted by these problems. And it makes such a difference to actually see the people who are impacted by these issues, not just hear the statistics and hear generalizations, but to actually look at the faces of all the people who've been affected by this problem. And it's also been such an amazing platform for us to, like, I don't want to speak for you, but to like raise our voices and feel like we have, the power to change things, and our voices deserve to be heard within the DOE and within our government, and has given us really such an amazing platform to express our views.
Yeah, and so both of you have mentioned Teens Take Charge, so can you kind of tell us a little bit about it and what it kind of led you to be involved with it?
Okay, so we're part of Teens Take Charge. It's an organization of high school students. Right now it's at about 60 high school students from over 30 high schools in the city, all 5 boroughs. It was started about 2017. Actually, our 2-year birthday was just a couple of weeks ago. It was founded by 2 students who went to a charter school, and our goals are educational equity and integration. So not just making sure that schools are integrated so that they're diverse and an accurate representation of our city, but also that there's equity. So students aren't just being given equal treatment, they're being given what they actually need to succeed. Yeah, so,
Yeah, you said when we joined.
Yeah, what led you to be involved with the organization?
Yeah, so I was in SEO, and one of the members of Teens Take Charge gave a presentation about it, and she presented in a very compelling way. And I always knew that I wanted to get involved because I knew that it was an issue that needs to be solved. And I didn't think that I could do anything, because if this is such a prevalent issue in our society today and it hasn't been solved already, I just thought, well, it's a lost cause. Because if there's so many people out there that understand that this is happening and nothing is being done, then what can I do as a student, as a 14-year-old, to impact the entire school system? And I had that mindset, but when she presented Teens Take Charge, I signed up online immediately as soon as SEO was over that day. And now I've been in Teens Take Charge since October, and it's been incredible. I've been able to, we developed our testimony. We actually didn't know each other before. We met each other on the same day that we were the only ones that had yet to write our testimonies. So really, procrastination is what brought us together.
Procrastination works sometimes.
Exactly. And we were the only 2 that we had to go to a separate room, and we realized when we were writing our testimonies that we had such vast differences and disparities in our own experiences. We're like, wait, so why don't we put it together? And that's when we started to become friends, and that's when we started to develop our testimony. Yeah.
And if you could, and I'm actually going to go back to you first. So if you could sum up, what does integration mean to you, and why does it matter to you?
I don't think that integration is just having Black and brown and white and Asian students in the same room, in the same classroom, in the same institution. I think it's also being culturally responsive, having a culturally responsive curriculum, being comfortable enough to speak to and interact with other races, because I think that's a common misconception that some people with privilege have, is that they think that we just want to be in the room with them. That's not what we want. That's not what we need. It's just, in order to be successful in a workplace in the future, because New York City is one of the most diverse cities in the world, and the most diverse city in the country. And if we have the most segregated school system, the only thing that serves to do is to further the discrepancies and the stereotypes that people already have of each other. But if we're exposed to different races and ethnicities at an early age, we can develop culturally responsive tactics to further our understanding of other people. And I don't think that people understand that. They just think that we just want to be in the same room with them, we just want to take their resources. We don't want to take resources. We want resources to be fairly executed and to be fairly dispersed across the city, because that's what we're being promised.
Sophie, same question for you.
100% agree with Tiffany. Just you summed it up perfectly.
Fantastic. So we're going to go to the audience in just 1 second. But first, I wanted to ask kind of what comes next in terms of getting policymakers involved in what you all are doing.
So this Friday is the 65th anniversary of Brown versus Board of Education, and in New York City, our public schools are more segregated than they were before Brown versus Board of Education. So Teens Take Charge is planning a big action this Friday. We are having a meeting with a bunch of different DOE officials, and as well as the chancellor, the deputy mayor, and we will be sitting down and really presenting our policy platform, which we have done numerous times before, but really giving it to them and then asking them the questions, really just demanding that they fix this problem now. And then afterwards, we'll be having a press conference on the steps of City Hall, just responding to how the meeting went, doing a Q&A. Anything you want to add?
Yeah, I can go really quickly over our policy platform. So our policy platform includes do we all know what the SHSAT is, or should I? Yeah, so some people are shaking their heads. So the SHSAT, basically we have 9 specialized high schools in New York City, and do you want to describe what specialized high schools are?
So of the 9 specialized high schools, for 8 of them, to get into them, all that they take into account is this one exam. And it's all material. You take the test in 8th grade, and it's almost all material that you're supposed to learn in high school. So to take this test, not only do you need to be on track with the curriculum, you need to have the resources to not only purchase this book that teaches you the information, but to do well, you need to be able to pay for test prep or tutors. And so this is putting the people who have more resources, they have more access to these schools that have a lot of resources.
Yeah, and often we find that students in schools with high concentrations of low-income students don't even know about the test. I learned about the test about 2 months beforehand, and that was because of Beam. I had taken a preparation course every single day in the morning. We had an online course. I got books from Beam, Beam provided me with, and I studied on my own. I got no offers, and it was a very difficult time for me because when I took the test, we had to unscramble paragraphs, and I've never heard of that in my life. There were things on that test that we don't even learn in school, that people even in more affluent schools say that they don't even learn in their schools. It's basically teaching to the test. And anyway, so our reform plan is to take the top 7% of every middle school, or to look at the top 7% of every middle school applicant and have them get into those schools rather than just solely basing their merit on one single test. That doesn't even account for the education that they're getting in their schools. And our second proposal is to increase transparency in the high school directory. So we have over 450 high schools in New York City, and you rank your choices 1 through 12, and it's a matching system. So if you don't get into your first school, you get into your second choice, and so forth. And it's a 1,000-page textbook that they give you to look at, and it's very overwhelming and often doesn't give you the information that you need. So we want it to be more concise. And then our last proposal is to establish academic diversity thresholds in all New York City schools, which will integrate schools racially, socioeconomically, and academically. And further information about that on teenstakecharge.com.
So, kind of related to that, we have a question that asks both of you. You both speak more eloquently about the problems and solutions than many adults I already know in education. Any plans to study and work in education?
Study and work. See, I'm future. I'm still a little unsure what I want to do, but I have aspirations to go to BU and study education policy or Wesleyan. Those are my top choices as of right now, but I want to study education policy.
Adding on to Tiffany, I'm a sophomore in high school, so I don't even know what colleges I'm interested in. But I definitely want to keep doing this work, even if I hope that I can do it as my career, but if not, just always continuing it.
And we could talk about this all day. I believe both of your Twitter handles are on the AtlanticLIVE's page. But we want to thank you both for taking the time to chat with. And yes, if you want to answer this last one, how can people in this room support your work?
Sorry, this is actually very
Yeah,
important.
yeah.
So we have,
Yeah, feel free.
that's why we're here. So we have our press conference on this Friday, and also our meeting with the chancellor and the deputy mayor and all other chancellors, other people, important people on the DOE. It's a long list, which is also on our website. And that's going to be this Friday. So if anyone is in the New York City area and can get to the press conference at City Hall, it's at 2 p.m.
And it'll also be streamed on Facebook Live, so you can watch it there and submit your questions if you want to ask us.
And if you go on our website and press learn more about our campaign, as soon as you go on teenstakecharge.com, it's right there. You just press the button. And also follow us on all of our handles. Everything is Teens Take Charge.
And adding on about the campaign, also just like keep following through our social media and through our website. This like meeting on Friday isn't just this singular event that's separated from all our work. This is something we've been working on, this enrollment equity campaign, since January. So we've gone to state assembly hearings, city council hearings, had meetings, we've testified at those hearings. We've had meetings with so many officials, so you can keep following our work and there'll be ways to support us on our website.
Yeah.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.